for the opportunity to share on Biodex's 11 variant ESR1 test. I am Gary Pestano, the Chief Scientific Officer and also the New York State Laboratory Director of our corporate lab. Code we are covering today is 0634U. Next slide, please. 0634U is an oncology test for cell-free DNA or cfDNA that evaluates 11 ESR1 estrogen-specific receptor variants listed here using droplet digital PCR or ddPCR. Test is conducted on plasma from blood specimens and reports as positive or negative. As background, the test is used for patients who have been previously diagnosed with hormone receptor positive HER2 negative advanced breast cancer. Patients are under consideration for aromatase inhibitor or AI endocrine therapy. They are currently receiving or have received AI therapy and are at risk for AI therapy resistance. Presence of the ESR1 mutations indicate the patient's eligibility for AI therapy, and when used in monitoring, can assess disease progression and therapeutic resistance, and may indicate the need to update therapeutic choice. Purpose: the NCCN clinical guidelines state today that ESR1 ctDNA testing is the preferred assay for guiding treatment selection, especially in patients who have previously been treated with endocrine therapy, including aromatase inhibitors. ESR1 monitoring may help physicians ensure that patients receiving AI treatment who develop endocrine therapy resistance are moved to alternative treatment pathways in a timely manner, resulting potentially in improved survival and patient care. Next slide, please. To continue, the methodology of the test is a blood specimen. I'll share a workflow in the next slide, which is collected and shipped to our central lab here at Biodeix. The plasma is extracted using an IVD kit, and the sole source laboratory performs the genetic analysis. The test analyzes for the ESR1 gene, 11 most prevalent mutations indicative of endocrine therapy resistance. The mutations specifically are listed here and utilizes droplet digital PCR. As I mentioned before, results are reported as ESR1 mutation status positive, negative. Next slide shows specifics and details of the methodology in the laboratory for 0634U, starting with whole blood collection in 2 Streck cell-free DNA collection tubes. These are the IVD cleared tubes. Specimens are received and accessioned into our secure data management system at the central lab, where nucleic acid extraction from the plasma and cell-free DNA quantification is then performed using the QIAGEN DSP circulating nucleic acid kit and the Qubit double-stranded DNA high-sensitivity assay kit. Technology then is utilized, 3 technologies to complete the droplet digital PCR reactions, starting with droplet generation on an auto DG, thermal cycling on a deep well PCR system, and finally reading and resulting of the assays from the droplet reader. And shown here for data analysis, we get these complex 2-dimensional dot plots, and results are reported positive, negative, or QNS in the case of quantity not sufficient. The device is designed for use by qualified laboratory personnel in a clinical laboratory environment that meets the applicable regulatory and quality system requirements. Next slide, please. In terms of resources, I mentioned the specialized lab equipment required and or kits, nucleic acid isolation, quantitation, the QX600 auto DG ddPCR system, which includes a PCR instrument and reader, certain assay kits, the ddPlex ESR1 mutation detection kit, and ESR1 extended variant assay kit, which contains all necessary controls for conducting and quantifying the test results in the QX Manager software. Additional required are qualified laboratory professionals to review the data, including the lab director, compose the report, and communicate the findings to the ordering physicians. Minimally, a clear regulated laboratory is conducting the test. Next slide shares our crosswalk recommendation for 0634U. We recommend crosswalk to code 0332U, which is an oncology pan-tumor genetic profiling test for 8 DNA regulatory, i.e. epigenetic marks, by quantitative polymerase chain reaction in whole blood on plasma nucleic acid reported as high or low probability of responding to an immune checkpoint therapy. Our rationale is that a biomarker analysis in 0634U is comparable to 0332U, including methodology, PCR-based, ddPCR versus qPCR, same analyte type being DNA, similar number of markers, 11 in 0634U versus 8 in 0332U, same specimen type, whole blood, and same area of medical specialty, oncology. Go to the next slide for a workflow overview of 0332U to show the similarities to 0634U in terms of the laboratory workflow. Whole blood is collected, shipped, accessioned, prepared for DNA extraction using various reagents and quantitation to then conduct the PCR reaction. In this case, it's RT-PCR, data analysis, and test result reporting. The device is similar to be used by qualified laboratory personnel in a clinical laboratory environment that meets applicable regulatory and quality system requirements. The final slide summarizes our recommendation based on the factors, disease similarity, breast cancer versus pan cancer. The sample type, whole blood. Methodology is PCR, ddPCR versus qPCR. Number of biomarkers, 11. Genetic markers versus 8 in the EpiSwitch CIRT test. Result and focus of validation studies with test results similarly being reported, either ESR1 mutation status positive or negative, or test results as high or low probability, and both tests are performed in a similar single centralized laboratory, Biodeix or Oxford Biodynamics. I'd like to thank you for your time and welcome any questions today.
Go ahead, Dr. Bridges.
Hi, I'm Dr. Bridges from the one of the CMS panelists, and I reviewed this code, and I just have a few questions for you. My first one is, what is the validated limit of detection per variant and the limit of blank, and is there any crosstalk in the 11-plex design?
Great questions, which we can follow up on. I can tell you the minimum level of detection is at 3 copies or 4 copies, depending on the variant analyzed, and we have detected no crosstalk at varying levels of input, but we can get you specific answers to the questions.
And then what is the concordance against an FDA-approved ESR1 circulating tumor DNA companion diagnostic on-shared samples?
Yes, we are conducting and have reported on results currently with the Guardant 360 test, where there is 100% concordance in positive variants called by the reference test and negative samples called by both tests. To date, we have detected 1 variant at a superior sensitivity as compared to the FDA-cleared device, but we again can send you the exact results.
Okay. And is the assay intended for use at progression on endocrine therapy, or does the report think the report will just give you a negative or positive results?
Negative or positive result.
Yep. How are the rarer added variants clinically justified?
All of the 11 variants in sum represent 98% of the most prevalent ESR1 variants.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Marge Connolly, and I'm a Strategic Director of Diagnostics R&D at LabCorp, and I'm here to present code X259U. Next slide, please. This is for the NIS2 Plus test. The description is hepatology, metabolic dysfunction-associated steatohepatitis, or MASH, with enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay, or ELISA, for YKL-40 and quantification of miR34A using reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction, RT-qPCR. And the algorithm reports a single score for MASH activity and fibrosis. So the intended use is in assigning a risk level for MASH with liver fibrosis. Serum samples are tested for YKL-40 and miR34A using an ELISA and an RT-qPCR technologies, respectively. And by combining the two individual biomarkers and an algorithm that includes an adjustment for patient's gender, a single score is reported that reflects both MASH activity and liver fibrosis. Next slide, please. The platforms for the miR34A assay is the Quant Studio 7 Flex. The platform for the Chi3L1 or YKL-40 assay is the Biodeix Synergy microplate reader. Next slide. And we're here to recommend a crosswalk from PLA code 0468U. This is the PLA code for NIS4 test. The NIS4 test is the predecessor to NIS2 Plus. NIS2 Plus was an optimization of the previous NIS4 test that had 4 components: YKL-40, miR34A, HbA1c, and alpha-2 macroglobulin. The optimization of the assay allowed us to remove 2 of the components, HbA1c and alpha-2 macroglobulin, and included a gender-specific adjustment to the algorithm. And this improved the ability of the assay to detect patients that have MASH with liver fibrosis. So the crosswalk from 0468U, which has a rate of $251.70, would be to subtract the combined rate for HbA1c and alpha-2 macroglobulin, which is $25.10, for a final price of $226.60. Next slide. And this slide just compares the 2 tests. You can see they're identical. They have the same intended use. NIS2 Plus is optimized for the identification of MASH with liver fibrosis, and we removed the 2 lower cost tests from the assay to achieve this improved optimization of the NIS4 test. Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, I'm Mike Ryan from McDermott, and I'll be talking to you today on behalf of the Point of Care Testing Association, or POCTA. This slide just provides a quick overview of our recommendations, which I'll go into a bit more detail on this next few slides. The first code that we'd like to talk to you today about is 87183, which is an amplified probe test for carbapenem resistance genes, run as a per isolate test. This is a test, as its descriptor sounds, that's intended for detection and differentiation of carbapenem resistance associated with susceptibility to carbapenem and gram-negative bacteria. It's run by amplified probe technology, or PCR. Next slide. Here we're proposing gap fill as a proposed way for CMS to establish the price for this service. We understand that this code went through the crosswalk gap fill process during last year's cycle. It was a crosswalk to 87150 times 1. In POCTA's view, that's not an appropriate crosswalk for a couple of reasons. Number one, the code descriptor explicitly requires testing for genes, plural. So reporting a test for a single resistance gene like 87150 in our view, wouldn't be appropriate. Also, recognizing that the code contemplates performance of multiple genes, you note that sources such as the Antibiotic Resistance Lab Network and the CDC support the performance of at least 5 genes when looking at carbapenem resistance. We provided the citation there. So as it would most commonly be run, we'd expect at least 5 genes to be run. In our estimation, sending this code to Gapfill would allow the MACs to do a more in-depth review of how this test is typically run and the resources that are required to run the test. The next code we wanted to talk about is 8XX30 glial fibrillary acidic protein. This is a biomarker for astrocyte activation that's related to brain injury. It's a test that's performed by immunoassay and run on human serum or plasma. And it gives clinicians an opportunity to assess the presence or progression of various neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's disease. As we outline on this next slide, we're proposing crosswalk to 83884, which is the code for neurofilament light chain. And the rationale is as follows. First, it's the same methodology. These are both tests that are run on immunoassay platforms. Tests are run on the same specimen type, both are run with plasma or serum. The specimen collection and specimen preparation steps are the same. The specimen stability requirements are the same for these tests. Both tests produce a similar result in that both are quantitative results, and both tests have a similar intended use in that they're biomarkers for neurodegenerative disease. And then last, but certainly not least, it's a code you heard a little bit about in our first presentation, X300U, which is the Abbott TBI test run on the Alinity platform. This is a test that's an immunoassay that's intended to assist docs in determining the need for a CT scan in patients who have suspected traumatic brain injury. Here we're proposing the same crosswalk that you've heard about earlier, which is crosswalk to 0570U, which is the Abbott TBI test run on a separate platform, separate Abbott platform. So our rationale here is sort of very similar. The methodology is the same between the two tests, both are immunoassays. We're looking at the same number of targets and the same exact targets between both assays, the GFAP and the UCHL1. Both specimen types are blood related, and the report content is nearly identical in that both provide a separate quantitative report of the individual immunoassay results, plus a semi-quantitative interpretation of that result. With that, ask for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cheryl James, presenting on behalf of Mayo Clinic and Mayo Clinic Laboratories, discussing 2 PLA codes. Oops, I went backwards, sorry. The first one is X251U for human papillomavirus, HPV types 18, 31, 33, and 35, using droplet digital PCR, specimen as blood. This will be a new PLA code effective on 10/1/2026. This code is proprietary to Mayo Clinic Laboratories. It's ordered by internal providers as well as MCL client providers. It's a LDT, and the test was launched in December of 2025. And so far, we've done approximately 300 tests in 2026. This aids in the monitoring of cancers caused by HPV virus genotypes 18, 31, 33, and 35. It's for disease monitoring, and the methodology is ddPCR. For this particular assay, we have 2 primer and probe sets directed at E6 and E7 for HPV type 18. And then we have single primer and probe sets for 31, 33, and 35 for a total of 35 target primers. We have calculated results that are reported as detected or not detected or indeterminate. And then a concentration is reported for the detected samples. We are asking for a crosswalk to 0470U times 0.5. 047U is also for HPV. It's for specifically for 16 and 18. Both are detecting a quantitative level of the cell-free HPV genotypes of the disease for monitoring purposes. Specimen type is plasma versus blood. The 0470U is 8 targets, ours is 5 targets, and NGS versus ddPCR. The 0.5 multiplier we feel impacts the difference between the 8 versus 5 markers, as well as the resources between NGS versus ddPCR. The second PLA code is also for human papillomavirus, specifically type 16. Again, same background, same purpose and methodology. The difference in this one is this has 4 primer and probe sets directed against E2, E6, and E7. So basically there's 3 primer sets and then a control primer set. And again, we're reporting calculated results and a concentration for those that are detected. Again, the crosswalk is to 0470U times 0.3 in this case. The 0.3 multiplier accounting for the difference in the number of targets, 8 targets versus 3, because we only counted the 3 targets that are the primer targets for the type 16 genotypes, as well as that multiplier difference for the resources between NGS and ddPCR. Any questions? Okay,
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Mark McCoy, presenting on behalf of Guardant Health for CPT code X295U. It's a CGP assay for RNA, looking at greater than 350 genes. The product name for this assay is Guardant 360 Tissue RNA. Background on the assay is that it's a service for patients with advanced solid tumor cancer. Really looking to determine if there's any targeted therapy regimens that are available. The service looks at RNA mutations and makes a determination if there's any opportunities for targeted therapy regimens. This is a high-level look at the resources that are used for the test. Once again, it's FFPE services that's basically lysated and pulled out, pulled to RNA. RNA is then transferred to complementary DNA and through a bunch of library preparation steps through PCR, then moved to the Illumina sequencer, and then onto our proprietary bioinformatics pipeline to perform the actual resources for the service. This is a high-level cartoon of what the workflow looks like. The bookends of the workflow I just described are also the tissue procurement on the front end, and then on the back end, the actual reporting and delivery of the service over to the physician. In terms of a crosswalk, we feel that 81456 is the most appropriate and comparable service to X295U on the ClinLab fee schedule. Both are looking at RNA, and both are doing a targeted genomic sequence analysis of RNA from FFPE on tumor tissue. X295U is looking at greater than 350 genes. It's actually 367 to be exact. Both are looking at RNA alterations, including gene rearrangements and splice isoforms. The main difference is the number of gene count. And I'll move to the next slide. This is a high-level table that displays the different steps and how they're each comparable across all of the different workflow criteria for both of these services. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. CD Laboratories Incorporated. Yes, good morning. My name is Mike McCormick, and I'm joined by my colleagues Christopher Fuller and Van Ty Paquette from City Laboratories, a division of Zimmer Biomet. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. Today, we're presenting on PLA code 0601U, which describes multi-analyte test intended to aid in the diagnosis of periprostatic joint infection, or PGI. This assay analyzes 11 biomarkers from synovial fluid and integrates those results through a diagnostic algorithm to to generate a probability score. Our goal today is to provide background on the clinical need, explain the methodology and resource requirements of the test, and present our recommendation for crosswalking this code. Next slide, please. Periprostatic joint infection is a serious complication of total joint arthroplasty and can create substantial substantial burden for both patients and the healthcare system. Because treatment decisions differ significantly depending on whether joint failure is septic or aseptic, timely and accurate diagnosis is critically important. The Synovasure Comprehensive PGI test panel with Intuition is designed to aid in this diagnostic process using a single synovial fluid specimen and providing a 24-hour turnaround time to enable timely decision-making. The purpose of the test is to combine multiple laboratory measurements into a single algorithm-based probability score that helps assess the likelihood of PGI. Methodologically, the test evaluates 11 biomarkers using multiple analytical approaches, including fluorescence immunoassay, clinical chemistry, ELISA, hematology, and related laboratory methods. Those individual measurements are then integrated into a reportable probability score. This multi-analyte algorithm-based approach is intended to support clinicians in a setting where diagnostic clarity is especially important. Next slide, please. This code reflects a resource-intensive, high-complexity laboratory service. All test components are derived from a single synovial fluid aspirate, but the testing itself is not performed on a single analytical platform. Instead, the specimen is processed through multiple laboratory methods to generate the required biomarker inputs. These resources include fluorescence immunoassay for microbial antigen markers, ELISA for alpha defensin, clinical chemistry for C-reactive protein, spectrophotometry for protein concentration, and hematology analysis for red blood cell count, total nucleated cell count, and percent neutrophils, with manual confirmation as needed. After these data are generated, the results are integrated by the Intuition diagnostic algorithm to produce a reportable probability score for PGI. Individual biomarker results are also included in the report, and a manual quality control and review step is performed before final release. Importantly, this work is performed in a high complexity CLIA and COLA certified laboratory environment, which further reflects the operational resources required to deliver this test. Next slide, please. Based on the methodology, complexity, and nature of the clinical output, our recommendation is to crosswalk 0601U to code 0342U. That code describes a multi-analyte algorithmic assay that also combines biomarker results generated through multiple laboratory methods and reports a clinically actionable disease likelihood result. The rationale for this recommendation is that both tests share several important characteristics. First, both incorporate results from a combination of fluorescence immunoassay and clinical chemistry methods. Second, both are highly complexity laboratory developed tests performed in certified clinical laboratory settings. Third, the biomarker scale is comparable, with 0342 based on 9 biomarkers and 0601U based on 11 biomarkers. Fourth, both use an algorithm to integrate multiple data points into a single actionable result. And finally, both deliver a disease likelihood output intended to support clinical decision-making. For these reasons, we believe 0342U represents the most appropriate crosswalk. Next slide, please. This final slide summarizes the comparison between MRA PanCan-D code 0342U and Synovasure Comprehensive PGI test panel with Intuition, code 0601U. While the intended uses differ, pancreatic cancer detection for 0342U and periprostatic joint infection diagnosis for 0601U, both address serious conditions associated with substantial clinical burden. Furthermore, the overall test architecture is highly comparable. Both are diagnostic tests, both rely on a single patient specimen, both integrate multiple biomarker inputs through an algorithm to provide a disease likelihood assessment, and both are laboratory developed tests performed in high complexity clinical laboratory settings rather than FDA approved in vitro diagnostic platforms. The primary difference is the disease state and specimen type, not the overall structure or complexity of the testing model. In summary, 0601U represents a multi-method, multi-biomarker, algorithm-based laboratory assay with a clinically actionable probability output. And we believe the characteristics of 0342U make it the most suitable crosswalk comparator. Thank you for your time and consideration. We'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mike Ryan again. It's the last time you'll see me today, I hope. Talking this time on behalf of the Coalition for 21st Century Medicine. I'll be presenting to you on 10 codes today, so we'll be moving pretty darn quickly. Those recommendations are all summarized here. You've heard from some of the individual labs already, but as you'll see, we'll be recommending 9 crosswalks and then 1 gap fill recommendation. The first code that's up is 0633U. This is the fetal focus test performed by Natera. It's an NGS-based test that reports results for determining fetal risk of inheriting autosomal recessive conditions like cystic fibrosis. For this code, we're recommending crosswalk to 0489U on the basis that the 2 tests have similar methodology. Tests are run on similar specimen types of blood. They both are looking at circulating cell-free DNA as their target analyte. The number of targets is the same, and that both tests describe a report for one or more genes. The outputs of the tests are the same in that they both identify paternally inherited pathogenic variants, and they both incorporate an algorithm that produces a fetal risk score. The next code up is 0634U, which you just heard about from the Biodeix team. This is the GeneStrat ESR1 test. It's a digital droplet PCR test that detects presence of multiple ESR1 mutations from circulating tumor DNA specimens and is used to support cancer monitoring. Here we're recommending crosswalk to 0332U on the grounds that has similar methodology. Both of these tests are based on PCR methods. Similar analyte, both are looking at DNA. The number of markers is similar. The Biodeix test is 11 versus the proposed crosswalk having 8. They have a similar specimen type and that both are run on blood-based specimens, and both are oncology tests. The next code is 0635U. This is the Castle Biosciences Advanced ADTX test. This is an NGS-based test that guides therapy selection for patients with dermatitis. It's a gene expression assay run on an NGS platform. Here we're recommending crosswalk to 0258U on the basis that the tests have similar methodology. Both are NGS-based, run on and perform gene expression analysis. They're run on mRNA, the similar specimen type, and that they're both taken from the surface of the skin. Both tests incorporate an algorithm that then produces a likelihood of response to therapy as its result. And both have a similar intended use in that they're intended to guide therapy selection for a skin condition. The next code is X257U. This is the Protega test performed by Verici. It's an NGS-based test that risk stratifies patients who have kidney transplants of their risk for fibrosis. This is an NGS-based RNA expression test. Here, our proposed crosswalk is to 0320U And the basis for that is the tests have the same methodology. Both are run on NGS platforms. Both look at the same type of target analytes. Both are RNA expression tests that perform transcriptome sequencing. Both use a blood-based specimen. Both incorporate an algorithm that then produces a risk score. And there we go. The next code is X268U. This is the Decipher prostate test. This is an NGS-based gene expression test. It provides information about the aggressiveness of the patient's prostate cancer and can inform decisions about how intense to treat that cancer. The recommendation here is for, if I can get the clicker to work, went too far, is to 81542U or 81542. This is the X268U is a new code that describes the NGS version of the Decipher prostate test, which is currently billed with 81542. Then the rationale for this crosswalk is that the tests have the same specimen type. Both are run on formalin fixed paraffin embedded tissue. Both are looking at the same mRNA analyte. Tests have the same exact number of analytes. Both are run on 22. Both include the same algorithm, or both incorporate an algorithm, and both are intended for the same use. The next test up is X278U. This is Genomic Health's Oncodetect baseline test for MRD. This is a novel standalone test that includes tumor sequencing and variant discovery and is used to inform further monitoring assay development as part of the Oncodetect test panel. Our proposed rate setting recommendation here is gap fill. And the rationale is that the resources required to run this test, including the bioinformatics and laboratory processes that are necessary to generate these results, aren't adequately reflected by the current MRD tests that are available and which are priced on the CLFS. And that the existing sort of legacy tumor sequencing codes were not designed for this type of MRD assay construction. In our estimation, CMS should consider gap fill to allow for a more accurate consideration of the costs and complexity required to furnish this specific service, rather than comparing the tests to what we believe to be non-comparable tests. The next code up is X279U. This is the H5 test offered by Natera. It's a genome sequencing panel that's used for carrier screening. It targets severe inherited conditions. They're specifically listed in the code descriptor for conditions like cystic fibrosis, spinal muscular atrophy, or Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. Here we're proposing crosswalk to 0449U. And the basis for that recommendation is that the tests are run on the same methodology. They're both genome sequencing tests. They're run on the same sample type. They have similar numbers of genes. The Natera test has 6 genes. The proposed crosswalk is 5. And that both tests are run for the same intended use for carrier screening. The next code up is X282U. This is the Avantec pancreatic cancer test run by ClearNote Health. This is a test that's run on a whole genome sequencing platform with 5 HMC enrichment. Plus it adds a glycan biomarker analysis. This test is intended to help detect pancreatic cancer earlier. Here, our recommendation is crosswalk to 0410U plus 86301. And our recommendation is for this reason. One, the 0410U is for version 1 of the Avantec test, which is identical in all respects to the X282U test, except it does not incorporate the glycan biomarker of CA19-9, which is separately run as part of the new test described by X282U. So to account for that additional work, we're asking for the addition of 86301, which is the code that's currently used to report CA19-9 analysis, which is the biomarker that the ClearNote team added to make this test. The next code up is X294U. This is the Oncodetect monitoring test run by Genomic Health. This is a sort of a MRD test that's run on an NGS-based platform with variants identified in the separately reported baseline test that we just described. Here, we're recommending crosswalk to 0340U on the grounds it has the same methodology. It's an NGS-based test looking at the same circulating tumor DNA analytes. It's run on the same specimen type of whole blood, same outputs in that there's a qualitative characterization and with same intended use. So it's an MRD test that's run on patients with cancer. And then last, but certainly not least, we have the Guardant 360 tissue test, which you heard about a couple of minutes ago from the Guardant Health team. This is an NGS-based test that assesses RNA-based fusions and splice isoforms in solid tumors. Here, we're recommending crosswalk to, if I can get the slide to move, 81456 on the basis that it's the same methodology. It's a genome sequencing test looking at the same analyte of RNA. Both tests look for more 50 or more genes and are run on the same specimen type of solid tumor. Their report content is similar in that both include both rearrangements of isoforms, and they're run in the same patient population, patients with cancer. 44 seconds to spare, Sarah. So I think we should have time for questions if you have any.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Predestin.
Hello, thank you for allowing me to present our code. So my name is Zoe Zhao. I'm the director of the development. Today we will present the code 0643U. Next page, please. 0643U is a liquid biopsy assay designed to detect clinical actionable genomic variants using urine cfDNA from GU cancer patients. The purpose is for comprehensive genomic profiling of a patient's urine sample for guidance on appropriate treatment selections. Methodology: this assay utilizes target NGS technologies and advanced bioinformatic analysis to identify genomic biomarkers in urine cfDNA samples. Next page, please. Here is the resources needed to perform this assay. The first step is sample collection. Urine is collected using urine sample collection kit. Next, following urine cfDNA extraction, library preparation, target enrichment, sequencing, bioinformatic analysis, and finally the reporting steps. Next page. Here is a comparison of the two assays which performed in our own lab. You can see from this table, these two assays are highly similar to each other. They both use the cfDNA as the analyte. They both use panel-based NGS sequencing technologies. They identify similar biomarkers such as SNV indels and copy number variation. The primary difference between these two assays are the sample input type and the sequencing depth. 0643U uses urine cfDNA as the input. However, the 0539U uses the plasma cfDNA. In addition to the sample type difference, which needs a different extraction process, urine-based assay also need a deeper sequencing depth. Next page, please. Here is a further comparison of the two extraction process. For the plasma cfDNA extraction, it normally starts with up to 5 ml sample volume. Takes about 3 to 4 hours for the whole cfDNA extraction process. Compared to the plasma cfDNA extraction, for the urine samples, the cfDNA extraction normally starts from a larger input volume, typical with up to 50 ml samples. Compared to the 5 ml plasma sample input, due to the larger volume, it takes a longer overall processing time for the urine cfDNA extraction, also with a relatively smaller batch size. Typically, if we do the calculation, the extraction process per urine sample is almost double amount the time and labor compared to the cfDNA extraction. Next page, please. Here is our recommendation for the crosswalk. Considering all the comparisons, we recommend crosswalk 0643U to 0539U with a multiplier of 1.3. The rationale for this is that both assays are LDT assays and performed in our own CLIA certified lab using similar workflows. They all start from the cfDNA library preparation into reporting. Compared to the 0539U, 0643U, as we talked previously, it needs additional resources for the sample extraction process, almost double amount the time and the effort, and also increased sequencing depth, also resulting in higher overall resources and cost. Therefore, we propose a pricing 1.3x of 0539U to reflect the increased workflow complexity, sequencing burdens, and overall resource requirements. With that being said, thank you so much for your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Insight Molecular Diagnostic.
Hello, can you hear me? Next slide, please. Oh, do you mind going one back? Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Anna Schutz. I'm the head of market access here at Insight Molecular Diagnostics, presenting alongside Damon Cox. Damon?
Yeah, Damon Cox with Genosan Consulting. Pleasure to be presenting alongside Anna with Insight Molecular.
Today, we're going to be presenting code X253U. Next slide, please. This code represents our GraftAssure test. GraftAssure is a transplant rejection assessment test that quantifies donor-derived cell-free DNA using digital PCR analysis of 45 SNPs in plasma. This is reported as the quantity of donor-derived cell-free DNA to determine the probability of allograft rejection. Next slide, please. In order to obtain a result, the following resources are required and sequence of events occurs. Blood plasma is obtained from the transplant recipient's whole blood sample. Donor-derived cell-free DNA is isolated from this blood plasma. Each isolated sample is subjected to pre-amplification prior to analysis by digital PCR. Each of the 45 SNPs are assessed individually by 15 separate reactions. That translates to 3 SNPs per well, partitioned into a little bit over 20,000 droplets. This translates to 300,000 droplets and almost 1 million SNP read events. This is then subjected to 40 cycles of amplification with fluorescence-labeled hydrolysis probes. In addition, we also quantify the total amount of cell-free DNA in a separate reaction. Post-PCR, the droplets in these 16 reactions are read by a dedicated reader, droplet reader, and bioinformatics analysis quantifies the amount of donor-derived cell-free DNA and the total cell-free DNA in the sample. Certified clinical lab scientists review the primary data quality and apply our QC criteria. After passing QC, a result with the donor-derived cell-free DNA results specifying the risk assessment for rejection, that is either high or low risk for rejection, is generated, reviewed, and signed by a board-certified lab director. The results are provided to the ordering physician at that time. Next slide, please. We recommend a crosswalk to 0493U for the following reasons. The code descriptors for both tests are nearly identical based on their shared intended use for transplant rejection risk. They share the same specimen type, that is plasma. They use the same target analyte, that is donor-derived cell-free DNA, using SNP-based detection to distinguish between the donor and the recipient. They report the same thing, that is quantity of donor-derived cell-free DNA, specifically the percentage, in the same patient population, that is patients post-transplant. These two tests are covered by Medicare under the same LCD as well. I'd like to provide some context on this next bullet. GraftAssure was assigned a PLA code last year and reviewed at last year's meeting. The expert panel voted 9-1 to crosswalk to what we are recommending today, code 0493U. Since then, we made a minor laboratory optimization to the test that required this new PLA code, which is why you see it here as X253U. The methodology, analyte, result type, and clinical intended use are all unchanged. So we're asking for the same crosswalk recommendation again. Furthermore, the test was also reviewed and approved by MolDX and priced at parity with the 0493U rate. We believe that crosswalk here is the most appropriate decision as it preserves consistency across already priced services in the same clinical category to which these tests fall under. We believe or have shown that both the MolDX pricing decision and the established PLA comparator here, 0493U, they both point to the same valuation that we are requesting here today. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Belay Diagnostics.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Hani Reddy. I'm the Chief Lab Officer at Belay Diagnostics and here to talk about code X274U. This is an oncology CNS central nervous system based code for low pass whole genome sequencing analysis of cerebrospinal fluid to be used for the interrogation of chromosome arm level focal losses and gains. Next slide, please. So the X274U, as I mentioned, is for low-pass whole genome sequencing of cerebrospinal fluid-derived tumor nucleic acid. Our particular test is called ASCENT. It assesses chromosomal arm level as well as focal gene losses and gains via low-pass whole genome sequencing of tumor-derived nucleic acid in the cerebrospinal fluid. The purpose and the methodology behind this is that it involves proprietary sequencing for aneuploidy both at the arm level as well as at the gene level, which is then used to help inform the diagnosis and management of confirmed or suspected primary and secondary CNS malignancies, consistent with NCCN and WHO guidelines. Next slide, please. So the resources for this particular code is that the test, the ASCENT test, utilizes proprietary metal safer-seq technology that was developed at the Johns Hopkins University to be able to evaluate chromosomal instability via aneuploidy testing. The workflow involves a highly optimized low-input next-generation sequencing test that is used to assess chromosomal arm-level aneuploidy and gene-level copy number variants, both losses and gains. Next slide, please. And so our recommendation is to be able to crosswalk to code 81349, which involves a broad low-pass sequencing analysis to detect constitutional chromosomal abnormalities, specifically focusing on copy number and loss of heterozygosity. The rationale being that the Belay ASCENT test fundamentally involves the same workflow processes while utilizing the same methodology, which is low-pass whole genome sequencing, to inform diagnosis and management of CNS malignancies using cerebrospinal fluid. Next slide, please. So I stop there. I can take any questions.
Hi, this is Mark with the panel. Is there any geneticist or pathologist time involved in review of these cases?
Absolutely, yes. So from workflow perspective, specimens are processed post-extraction of DNA. We run the ASCENT test on it. Data goes through a highly complex bioinformatic pipeline that's then evaluated by variant analysts. Data is curated, reports are generated, and then as the ABMGG boarded molecular geneticist, I review these reports and sign them out.
Thank you for explaining.
My apologies that it hadn't been included on the slide, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Genomic Health.
Good morning. My name is Rick Boehner, and I'm the Chief Medical Officer of Abbott Cancer Diagnostics. Today, I'll be discussing the Oncodetect tumor-informed MRD test, and there'll be two PLA codes, code X278U for the baseline MRD testing, and X294U for the subsequent plasma MRD testing. Next slide, please. Oncodetect is a tumor-informed minimal residual disease oncology test for solid tumors. The baseline test, X278U, uses NGS to identify patient-specific mutations from dissected patient tumor tissue, followed by the use of these patient-specific variants for subsequent ctDNA identification from the patient's baseline blood sample. This baseline assessment evaluates the patient's MRD status and provides a baseline for subsequent MRD monitoring assessments. I'd like to underscore a few items about the methodology and resources involved for Oncodetect, as we think these are unique. Oncodetect uses our deep enhanced whole exome sequencing. Deep means we use a clinical grade comprehensive genomic profiling platform to sequence 440 genes relevant to solid tumor oncology at 800x coverage, and the remaining exome at 400x. Enhanced exome means that our hybrid capture baits include exonic but also adjacent intronic sequence, which extends our coverage 2 to 3-fold beyond a standard exome. This is important because it enables us to create a greater design space to identify more patient-specific variants. In parallel, we're performing an enhanced exome sequencing of the patient's white blood cells to identify SNPs and CHIP variants from the patient's PBCs, and this is then subsequently subtracted from the patient's identified tumor variants. The sequencing data is then processed through a proprietary bioinformatics pipeline. Here we're selecting up to 200 mutations or variants per patient, and we assign a score to each of these identified variants. For example, a mutation would get a higher score if it was a driver mutation in a readily identifiable region of the genome, whereas a lower score would be given to a passenger mutation in a more difficult to identify region of the genome. We then use, after scoring, a proprietary algorithm that generates a qualitative MRD call derived from interrogation of the patient's cfDNA and ctDNA detection, and if appropriate, a quantitative result using mutant tumor molecules per mil. These steps are important because they enable assay sensitivity LOD95s to be 50 parts per million when we stress the system with a limited input of cfDNA, 15 nanograms, and a limited number of variants, 60. And that sensitivity can increase down to 15 parts per million, that LOD95, under optimal conditions with 60 nanograms of cfDNA and 200 variants. And this is what we're generally seeing in our commercial experience. This increased sensitivity is clinically relevant in the detection of patients at risk of recurrence. Next slide, please. In terms of our request, there are two tumor-informed MRD baseline tests on the CLFS, Haystack 0560U and Invitae 0306U. We don't think either of these tests are comparable to Oncodetect, and therefore are recommending CMS consider gap fill. The rationale for this request is, in brief, Oncodetect tracks up to 200 mutations while the others are 50 or less. And as I just explained, it requires higher instrument time, sequencing costs due to that increased depth, and enhanced exome sequencing. There's associated data storage, and then the pipeline computational resources. This additional complexity is required to establish the patient-specific baseline test, and we don't think is adequately reflected by the current MRD codes or the legacy tumor sequencing or panel codes. So therefore, our recommendation would be gap fill to allow consideration of the actual cost, complexity, and clinical purpose of the Oncodetect baseline test rather than a comparison to these other two tests. Next slide, please. Let's now turn our attention to the Oncodetect monitoring test code for subsequent blood sample testing. X294U is an oncology MRD monitoring test for plasma testing after the baseline assay. The plasma samples are analyzed for ctDNA or MRD using patient-specific assays that I just described. The ctDNA is reported similarly, qualitatively as detected or not detected, and then quantitatively as the amount of circulating ctDNA as mutant tumor molecule per mil. And similarly, we show similar tests. We show the longitudinal test results so that it can be trended over time. We think this methodology and resources are well described. We use patient plasma sample derived from post-capture libraries. We amplify them, QC them, sequence these hybridized CF and ctDNA fragments. The data are processed through proprietary bioinformatic pipelines, but we derive then qualitative MRD and quantitative ctDNA measurements. So detection of MRD is a powerful new tool to detect therapy efficacy and detection of relapse prior to clinical and radiographic recurrence. And let's turn to the next slide, please. With respect to our recommendation, it would be to crosswalk to 0340U. This is the Signatera monitoring test. And I'm sorry that we didn't capture the reimbursement. It's $3,590 on the slide. 0340U is an oncology analysis of MRD from plasma. Assays personalized to each patient based on prior NGS sequencing of the patient's tumor and paired germline DNA, reported qualitatively with quantitation when appropriate. Our rationale is that Oncodetect uses the same methodology in the NGS, the same depth of sequencing, which is important, approximately 100,000 X from these plasma samples, same specimen type, whole blood, same analyte, CT or cfDNA, same output, qualitative and quantitatively, same intended use, and we think comparable resources and steps involved for performing this test. So thank you very much for your time, and I'm open for any questions.
Hi, Rick. This is Mark Rumpler. This question is regarding 278U, and earlier you mentioned the customized probe manufacturing, but I'm wondering how many patient-specific probes are manufactured per case, and does that cost weigh heavily on the overall cost for the assay?
It does. In terms of overlap, the vast majority, there are clearly some driver mutations that are consistent amongst patients, but the large majority of these 200 variants that we're identifying are passenger mutation, and to answer that question would require customized probes.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Hello, Damon Cox with Genosand Consulting, presenting on behalf of Biodeix for two codes, 0644U and 0645U. Next slide. 0644U, oncology and leukemia for MRD detection for rearrangements, blood or bone marrow, personalized assay design, and baseline quantification. The background is that Biodeix's Fusion MRD test is a tumor-informed product used to detect MRD, which is present when patients with leukemia have persistent disease. Half of leukemia patients have a disease driven by a gene fusion with hundreds of possible gene fusions that can drive the leukemia. The product is a personalized droplet digital PCR-based assay that detects the unique gene fusion driving the patient's leukemia, and the test is personalized to each patient's leukemia mutation to help healthcare providers identify residual, recurrent, or resistant cancer earlier than traditional MRD methods such as flow cytometry. The purpose and methodology, Biodeix's Fusion MRD baseline test, as represented by the 0644U, uses previously performed genomic sequencing of the patient's tumor to identify the structural variants that result in gene fusions, which are then used to develop a personalized digital droplet PCR-based assay. The assay is validated using diagnostic biopsy material from the patient to ensure detection of the patient's gene fusions. And the personalized ddPCR assay is tested in a panel of specimens that do not have the patient's unique gene fusion to ensure specificity for the assay. And the personalized MRD assay is utilized in the patient's diagnostic specimen to provide a baseline quantification of disease burden in the patient. Next slide, please. So the resources, the results from previously performed patient-specific genome sequencing, as mentioned, of the tumor is utilized to identify the genomic coordinates for patient-specific gene fusion breakpoints. That breakpoint information is utilized for patient-specific ddPCR assay development, and the personalized primers and probes are ordered. The patient diagnostic sample is processed, either the blood or bone marrow cell count is obtained, specimen is subjected to RNA extraction, the RNA is converted to cDNA and stored. Then the ddPCR run is initiated with the patient-specific primers and probes, the patient cDNA, the ddPCR reagents to validate the detection of the patient-specific gene fusion and provide baseline quantification. The assay is also tested in a panel of samples without the patient-specific gene fusion to confirm no off-target signal. The results are processed through a custom and proprietary bioinformatics pipeline. In the review of patient data, the assay QC performance metrics, the baseline disease burden quantification, summarization, and reporting occurs. Next slide, please. Our recommendation is to gap fill 0644U with the rationale that there are no comparable existing tests available for the Fusion MRD baseline assay. It uses patient-specific tumor genome information to make that personalized ddPCR-based assay for individual Fusion MRD detection, as mentioned. Other droplet digital PCR tests will lack that personalization and only measure one or more predetermined biomarkers, which aren't applicable for cancers driven by less common fusions. Personalized assay design and validation requires additional hands-on time and reagent, and the comparable personalized MRD detection platforms generally use next-generation sequencing, not the droplet digital PCR. Next slide, please. Actually, there should have been one more slide for 0645U as well. That's still the 0644U.
Damon, we're actually going to take a lunch break, and maybe when we come back, we can pull up your slides for 0645U.
Perfect.
Does that sound good? Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank
so
you.
Right now we're going to take a lunch break, and we'll start promptly at 1 o'clock. Okay, welcome everyone back. We are going to continue with our session, the annual laboratory meeting, clinical diagnostic laboratory annual public meeting. And we're going to continue with our presenter, Biodeix, continuing with the presentation at 0645U.
Hello and welcome back. So again, Damon Cox with Genosam Consulting, presenting on behalf of Biodeix for the two codes. We previously discussed the code 0644U, which represents the company's baseline leukemia MRD test, whereas this code 0645U represents leukemia MRD monitoring test. The background is the same, and using a personalized previously designed and validated baseline assay, which was represented by the 0644U test. And next slide. The resources, again, using the previously developed patient-specific droplet digital PCR assay is utilized for the MRD detection, and the same resources as the 0644U, using a custom and proprietary bioinformatics pipeline. And the next slide. We recommend that 0645U be gap filled. And the rationale behind that is there are no comparable existing tests available for our Fusion MRD monitoring assay. This assay uses a patient-specific gene fusion assay for each patient's MRD assay. And the personalized assay requires additional hands-on time, and the reagents can't be bulk ordered. And similar to the baseline test, the comparable personalized MRD detection products utilize next-generation sequencing methodology, not droplet digital PCR. and happy to answer questions either myself or the Paradex team.
Hi, this is Chris Chong from the panel. Going back to 06, the previous code, when you said genomic sequencing, which method are you using? Are you using NGS or whole genome sequencing?
What I'd like to do is have Ellie Wilson, who's our laboratory director, if she can weigh in on the specifics.
Yeah, so we accept multiple different formats for sequencing. It can be RNA sequencing, it can be NGS, whole genome sequencing, as long as we are provided with the precise breakpoint coordinates. That is what we're looking for, and we can get that from multiple modalities.
Okay, second question is on the follow-up. On the average, how many targets are you doing?
Per patient?
Yes.
So we measure one bioanalyte or one biomarker per patient per assay, but we use multiple probes in detecting the fusion oncolyte. So this helps to significantly increase our specificity and reduce any background signal.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Excellent. Oh, good afternoon. My name is Kevin Haas. I'm the Chief Development and Technology Officer at Veracyte, and I'm presenting Veracyte's recommendation for the appropriate basis of payment for a Decipher prostate test using a next-generation sequencing platform, which is code X268U. Next slide. So the code descriptor is it's an oncology prostate test based on mRNA using next-generation sequencing, gene expression profiling of 22 genes from FFPE tissue, and the algorithm is reported as a risk score. So the background is Decipher is a prostate tissue-based molecular test that is used to assess the risk of metastasis or metastatic progression in patients with localized or advanced prostate cancer. And tests like these are used to better assess the aggressiveness of disease and then guides the treatment necessary for men based upon risk of disease and progression to an incurable state. So a bit of the test purpose, the test measures expression of 22 genes in non-coding and coding RNA in prostate cancer tissue, and it conveys this tumor aggressiveness and disease progression risk. And overall, the higher score indicates a greater risk of progression and may support earlier, more intensive treatment, even in those with favorable clinical features. And conversely, a lower score suggests a lower risk, helping to avoid unnecessary treatment. For the general overview of the methodology, the uses an RNA sample from formalin-fixed paraffin-embedded tumor, and then it's subjected to whole transcriptome-wide next-generation sequencing, and then using a proprietary algorithm, a risk score is calculated from this expression levels of the 22 genes and non-coding RNAs. And then finally, a qualified laboratory professional reviews the findings and reports this to the ordering physician. Next slide. So the resources it's again a RNA from FFPE sample, and then it's a transcriptome-wide analysis using NGS across those 22 genes. And then from there, we do a quantification of the results, and then using a proprietary algorithm, we quantify that genomic risk on a score ranging from 0 to 1. And then the progression of the disease is based upon validated cut points for different treatment recommendations. Okay, next slide. Our recommendation is a crosswalk to code 81542. The code descriptor is here below, which is a very similar description, which is also using mRNA, but in this case from the microarray platform. And so the rationale for the crosswalk is that the new code, it just essentially describes an NGS version, an NGS platform for the Decipher prostate test. And this is complementary and consistent with the currently built 81542, which is using microarray platforms. So the two codes have identical specimen types, identical analytes, identical number of genes, identical algorithm, identical test purpose, and clinical impact and clinical utility. And really this is in congruence with the AMA CPT editorial panel, which has been requiring and recommending using a code to reflect this platform change from microarray to NGS. Okay, next slide. This table gives more of a point-by-point comparison of the two codes referenced in the crosswalk. So again, very similar code descriptor, just differing by the platform technology. similar specimen or same specimen type and specimen collection, specimen pre-processing and RNA extraction, same analyte, same genes, and then different essentially the methodology of the readout. And that rod signature then goes through the same analysis methodology to provide the same metastasis risk score. And they could be used congruently. Okay. Next slide. And then just to reference some precedent for using this crosswalk in support of the 81542 is that in recent years, this is similar analysis has been applied to other codes. So we have two reference points here, 81545, which was when Afirma, which was an NGS transition from a microarray test, in this case in looking at thyroid cancer, but very similar gene expression assay. This code was crosswalked in 2021. And then similarly, MammoPrint, a test very similar in breast cancer, similarly had a crosswalk applied in 2022 when it moved from the microarray to the NGS. Okay, next slide. And just for another consideration as well, which is another crosswalk candidate or viability is to the code 81523 as well, which this is also a gene expression test from FFPE, looking at, in this case, 70 genes and being more in the case of breast cancer, but a similar algorithm for risk indication of distant metastasis that informs treatment recommendations and therapy escalation, de-escalation. Okay. So I think that's the last presenter on that slide. I think that was my last slide. So with that, really appreciate the panel's time and open to any questions on the basis of our payment for the Decipher prostate test moving to next generation sequencing.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up is True Diagnostic. And with 12 codes, I can't wait to see how fast you talk.
I talk really fast. Good afternoon. I'm Mike Mallon, Chief Scientific Officer at True Diagnostic. Thank you for the opportunity to speak remotely today. My colleague, John Terranzetti, is with you today in person. Hopefully you get a chance to meet him. As mentioned, we're going to present pricing recommendations for 12 new PLA codes, 0616U through 0627U. These are all DNA methylation-based diagnostic tests developed and validated by our CLIA-certified laboratory in Lexington, Kentucky. Just a little background on the tests. DNA methylation is an epigenetic modification or a chemical tag on DNA that changes in response to disease progression and phenotype. This often occurs before clinical symptoms appear. The panel is likely familiar with DNA methylation in the setting of cancer diagnostics. Our tests are similar, but chronic disease focused. An MDS, or methylation diagnostic score, is a proprietary algorithm that interrogates thousands of specific CpG methylation sites from a whole blood sample and produces a binary result, positive or negative, for the specific disease or condition. The clinical value is early detection, identifying a pathogenic molecular signature before conventional diagnostics would catch them, and thus enabling earlier intervention. Next slide, please. Let me briefly walk you through the analytical workflow because it's central to our pricing rationale. So all 12 MDS tests use the same wet lab analytical procedure. They differ only in the specific CpG loci that are interrogated and which our proprietary algorithm produces the result. So walking through the workflow, there's a pre-analytical stage where genomic DNA is extracted from whole blood using magnetic bead purification. There's an analytical stage where bisulfite conversion separates methylated from unmethylated cytosines, and a methylation analysis is performed on an Illumina methylation microarray platform. There's a post-analytical stage where a proprietary algorithm analyzes thousands of CpG sites and generates an MDS result. The key cost drivers here are the analytical and post-analytical steps: consumables, Illumina instrumentation, skilled labor, and the development, validation, and ongoing maintenance of the bioinformatics pipeline and proprietary algorithms. Next slide, please. So let me walk briefly through the 12 tests by clinical indication. We've grouped them by category here. We'll start with psychiatry. The first one is 0618U, bipolar disorder, which is indicated for patients presenting with depression but unrecognized hypomania. Positive result here supports early intervention with mood stabilizer therapy rather than antidepressants alone. 0622U, or major depressive disorder, indicated for patients with symptoms of depression. A positive result reflects neurotransmitter dysregulation and HPA axis dysfunction in early disease. 0627U, for schizophrenia, indicated for patients with cognitive, behavioral, or social decline suggestive of psychotic disorder. Positive result supports early antipsychotic therapy. Next slide, please. For neurology, we have two codes. 0616U, dementia, indicated for patients with early signs of memory loss. Positive result indicates early dementia pathology, supports further imaging and therapy to slow progression. 0626U for Parkinson's disease, indicated for patients with early motor or non-motor signs. Positive result reflects early pathology and mitochondrial dysfunction in early disease. Next slide, please. For HCC and hepatology, 0620U, hepatocellular carcinoma, indicated for patients with signs and symptoms suspicious for HCC. Positive result reflects oncogenic processes and tumor suppression and activation. 0624U for NASH, indicated for patients with signs and suspicious for non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. Positive result enables management strategies to prevent progression to cirrhosis. Next slide, please. Autoimmune and endocrinology, 0623U, multiple sclerosis, indicated for patients with suspected MS. A positive result reflects neuroinflammation and immune dysregulation in early disease. 0625U, osteoporosis, indicated for patients at risk for osteoporosis. A positive result reflects disrupted bone remodeling, calcium metabolism, dysfunction, and hormonal changes. For ASCVD, 0617U, atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, indicated for patients with cardiovascular disease risk factors. Positive result reflects coronary heart disease risk and supports initiation of risk mitigation strategies. Next slide, COPD, 0619U. COP is indicated for patients with respiratory symptoms. A positive result reflects lung tissue damage and immune pathway activation and guides bronchodilator and anti-inflammatory therapy. Next slide, please. Infectious disease for 0621U for Lyme, indicated for patients with signs of Lyme disease. A positive result reflects infection and innate immune activation, enabling antibiotic therapy to prevent disseminated infection. Whew, okay. Next slide. Now I'd like to walk you through our pricing recommendation. So our primary recommendation is to crosswalk all 12 of these MDS codes to 0020M, the Epigenetic CNS methylation classifier. Let me read the 0020M descriptor. Oncology, central nervous system, analysis of 30,000 DNA methylation loci by methylation array, utilizing DNA extracted from tumor tissue. Diagnostic algorithm reported as probability of matching a reference tumor subclass. We've created a comparison table for you here between our codes and 0020M. You can see we're using the same detection platform, which is the Illumina methylation array, the same wet lab workflow, which is bisulfite conversion, Illumina profiling, methylation matrix generation. A comparable CPG loci, which are interrogated, our tests range from 5,000 to 30,000, and 0020M uses 30,000. Same analytical output, which is a locked proprietary algorithm generating a classification result. Same bioinformatic pipeline, QC normalization, classifier inference. Same CLIA complexity, which is high, and same labor profile, which is skilled. Really, the only meaningful differences are specimen type, which is whole blood versus tumor tissue, and clinical indication. And from a resource use perspective, differences in specimen processing for whole blood and tumor tissue are really negligible compared to the analytical and post-analytical complexity, which is where the majority of costs are incurred. For the 12 tests, 0020M is really the only appropriate crosswalk. For the other 6, we've identified potential alternative crosswalks within their clinical indications that I'd like to briefly highlight. Next slide, please. So for 6 of our 12 tests, really no other code exists that describes a similar level of technical complexity or resource use for the same clinical indication. For these, 0020M is really the only viable crosswalk. Those include the tests mentioned here, which is NASH, multiple sclerosis, osteoporosis. Next slide, please. As well as ASCVD, COPD, and Lyme. For the remaining 6 tests, we similarly believe that 0020M is probably the best crosswalk. However, we do see a potential alternative crosswalk within their clinical indication, which I'll walk through now. Next slide, please. For the psychiatry series, so this includes 0618U bipolar, 0622U MDD, and 0627U schizophrenia. In addition to our recommended crosswalk to 0020M, there is a potential alternative crosswalk to 0291U, which describes psychiatry mood disorders, which is mRNA gene expression profiling by RNA sequencing of 144 genes, whole blood, algorithm reported as predictive risk score. The rationale here is that it's the same clinical indication for psychiatry and mood disorders, same specimen for blood, similar complexity, RNA sequencing of 144 genes versus DNA methylation of 10,000 plus sites, and a similar reportable result, proprietary algorithm producing a risk classification. Next slide, please. For the neurology series, 0616U dementia and 0626U Parkinson's, there's a potential alternative crosswalk to 0170U. 0170U describes neurology, autism spectrum disorder, RNA next generation sequencing, saliva. Algorithmic analysis reported as a predictive probability of ASD diagnosis. The rationale here is that it's a similar clinical indication of neurology, similar specimen complexity, whole blood and saliva are both simple specimens from a processing perspective. Similar analytical complexity, RNA next generation sequencing versus DNA methylation of 20,000 plus sites, and similar reportable result, proprietary algorithm producing a risk stratification. Next slide, please. For hepatocellular carcinoma 0620U, there's a potential alternative crosswalk to 0565U. 0565U describes oncology, hepatocellular carcinoma, next generation sequencing, methylation pattern assay to detect 6,626 epigenetic alterations, cell-free DNA from plasma algorithm reported as cancer signal detected or not detected. The rationale here is that it's the same clinical indication, oncology, hepatocellular carcinoma, same methodology, methylation analysis, comparable methylation sites, 6,626 versus our 5,000, and a similar reportable result as a proprietary algorithm, producing a detection classification. So thank you for your time. To summarize, all 12 MDS tests share the same Illumina methylation platform, the same analytical workflow, and the same resource profile. We believe 0020M is the most appropriate crosswalk based on technical and resource equivalence. I'm happy to take any questions, and 45 seconds left.
Very well done. Any questions?
Yeah. Hi, this is Mark Rumpler. So does the loci panel differ across the 12 disease indications, or are you using the exact same array for every test?
Same array, different loci, different algorithm per test. So we use the same Illumina array. However, we range between 5,000 and 30,000 CPG sites per algorithm.
Okay. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Mark.
Hey, this is Joe Leonard, also from the panel. Quick question. So once the array is analyzed and you have the, let's say, 20 or 18,000 sites, the algorithm is converging this, as you provided in your description, into a positive or negative risk score. Do you mind explaining what that looks like in the report, just so we can assess what's involved in that?
Yeah, good question, Joe. So I think score is maybe not a misnomer, but it implies a number 0 to 100 or something like that. In this case, it's actually a binary result. So positive or negative, yes or no for the disease of question, if that helps.
And then that probably answers my second question, which is in terms of the sign out or the review of the results, is a molecular pathologist involved, or is this more results, bioinformatics pipeline, algorithm executed, QC check?
Yeah, QC check. Everything is reviewed by our laboratory director, as well as the internal quality assurance that we've created within the pipeline, but primarily pipeline associated QC as well as director sign-off.
Perfect. And then just because you mentioned the 0020U as a potential crosswalk, I just wanted to confirm because there's an array, array is the wrong word, a spectrum of diseases and indications that you cover, including hepatocellular carcinoma, meaning a cancer. But also for these cancer types, you are testing whole blood, no tissue.
Correct.
Okay, so in terms of from sample, aside from the change of the methylation sites, the platform is the same, and all are also resulted as positive, negative, or a binary result.
Yes, I believe you described everything correctly. Whole blood,
Okay.
whole blood analysis, binary result. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very, very much. Go get a drink of water. You're good. You did great. Appreciate it. Next is Phenomics Sciences.
Yes, hello. My name is Juliana Ron. I am the Director of Corporate Development with Phenomics Sciences, and today I'll be presenting on code X298U. Next slide, please. Thank you. As background to this code, obesity is a chronic complex disease affecting over 650 million adults globally. Obesity's pathophysiology is heterogeneous and influenced by multiple factors. The heterogeneity is reflected in the variable response to anti-obesity interventions amongst individuals. Recent advances have led to the recognition of distinct obesity phenotypes, and targeting these phenotypes has shown promising results in response to different weight loss interventions. The MyPhenomeRx test associated with this code detects whether an individual possesses an obesity phenotype. Clinical evidence shows a distinct correlation between these obesity phenotypes and an individual's response to weight loss therapies. The test takes isolated DNA, which is genotyped, combined with patient biometrics and run through a proprietary algorithm, assigning phenotype correlations associated with obesity. Phenotype results are then used to create the test report. Next slide, please. The test uses several resources, as we've described here. First, a DNA sample is submitted for processing with biometric details. After sample receipt, the sample is processed through the Infinium assay workflow, which provides multiplexed targeted genotyping of SNP regions. Data are quality checked and then processed through the risk score algorithm to identify the phenotype. The algorithm result generates a report, including phenotype and likelihood to benefit from therapeutics. Next slide, please. We are respectfully requesting a crosswalk to code 0349U. The rationale for this crosswalk is that the tests analyze the same specimen types, blood or buccal swab. DNA is analyzed, phenotypes are reported with a focus on genetic drug effectiveness and drug response, increasing efficacy and aiding in clinical considerations when reviewing multiple pharmacotherapy options for a disease. Next slide, please. We've put together this table demonstrating the similarities between the tests with the MyPhenomeRx test, the code X298U on the left, and our proposed crosswalk 0349U on the right. As we can see again, specimen types, buccal swab or blood for both, the technology, DNA genotyping for both. And then we've broken down resource utilization into 3 sections. First, molecular methodology. In the MyPhenomeRx test, we have DNA isolation followed by multiplex targeted genotyping of SNP regions. And then for the crosswalk, DNA isolation followed by multiplex targeted variant analysis. Next, looking at computational scoring, MyPhenomeRx is executing genotype to phenotype translation through the proprietary risk score algorithm. The crosswalk is also taking genotype to phenotype translation through proprietary workflows. And then looking at reporting, both tests are reporting phenotypes. The MyPhenomeRx test is showing likelihood to benefit from therapeutics, while the crosswalk is showing impacted gene-drug interactions, which we feel are very similar. In clinical reporting, both tests are again predicting phenotypes for therapeutic considerations or guidance, creating clinically actionable interpretation. And finally, in our clinical function section here, we see again identical details supporting treatment selection and therapeutic optimization. So for these reasons, we're requesting the crosswalk to 0349U. Thank you for the time. Are there any questions?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have protein biodiagnostics / nanostics.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Lamb, and I'm presenting today alongside Dr. John Lewis on behalf of Protein Biodiagnostics and Nanostics. We are speaking in support of PLA code 0609U, ClarityDX Prostate. ClarityDX Prostate is a laboratory-developed test that applies a multivariate algorithm to serum or plasma PSA measurements combined with clinical features, generating a probability score for clinically significant prostate cancer. Next slide, please.
Great, everything's fine. Please keep going.
Prostate cancer detection is a recognized clinical challenge. Current NCCN guidelines explicitly acknowledge the need to balance two competing goals: maximizing detection of aggressive, clinically significant cancers, those classified as Gleason grade group 2 or higher, while simultaneously minimizing the overtreatment of indolent, slow-growing disease. The NCCN guideline highlights biomarker tests as a key tool to achieve this balance, preserving the balance benefits of PSA screening while reducing the unnecessary biopsies and the downstream harms associated with the overdiagnosis. Clarity Dx Prostate was developed precisely to fill that role. The test is indicated for two populations: men aged 40 to 75 who are at high risk of prostate cancer, and men aged 45 to 75 at average risk. Specifically, those presenting with a PSA greater than 3.0 nanograms per mil and or very suspicious digital rectal exam finding. Next slide, please. Methodologically, Clarity Dx Prostate measures total PSA and free PSA via a chemoluminescence immunoassay, and it feeds those biomarker values into a proprietary predictive algorithm along with clinical inputs. These optional inputs allow for greater predictive accuracy when imaging data, predictive accuracy. The output is a continuous risk score ranging from 0.1% to 99.9%, with the probability of detecting grade group equal to or more than 2 prostate cancer on biopsy. This score supports the clinician's decision on whether biopsy is warranted. Next slide, please. This slide walks through the laboratory workflow and the resources needed. The serum or plasma specimens are collected at the ordering provider site and shipped to the CLIA certified laboratory. Upon receipt, total PSA and free PSA are quantified using a validated chemoluminescence immunoassay. The measured biomarker values are combined with clinical features inputs provided at the time of order, and they are entered into the Clarity Dx Prostate algorithm. The algorithm generates a single probability score, indicating the likelihood of grade group 2 or equal to or more than 2 prostate cancer. This workflow, a sample receipt, immunoassay quantitation, algorithm processing, and risk score reporting, closely mirrors the technical architecture of existing reimbursed prostate cancer risk stratification tests. And the figure on this slide illustrates that end-to-end process. Next slide, please. On this slide, we're recommending that CMS establish the Medicare payment for CPT 0609U through crosswalk to CPT 81539. The 2026 CLFS payment for 81539 is $760. CPT 81539 is defined as oncology for high-grade prostate cancer, biochemical assay of 4 proteins, total PSA, free PSA, intact PSA, and human kallikrein 2, utilizing plasma or serum with a prognostic algorithm reported as a probability score. We believe that 81539 is the most clinically and technically appropriate crosswalk for the following reasons. It has the same clinical indication. Both are specifically indicated for prostate cancer risk stratification. Both are designed to inform biopsy decisions in men at elevated risk. Same sample type. Both tests are performed on plasma or serum. Same analytical methodology. Both tests utilizes biochemical immunoassay as a primary measurement platform. Similar workflow complexity and the same result type. Both tests produce a probability score of high-grade or clinically significant prostate cancer, and the output structure and clinical use cases are identical. And for these reasons, we are recommending the crosswalk to 81539. Thank you for your consideration. Happy to address any questions. All right.
Thank you very much.
So good afternoon again. My name is Eric Lamb, as I just mentioned, and I'm alongside Dr. Marta presenting on behalf of Admit Therapeutics, and we're here to provide our recommendation on payment methodology for PLA code 0649U, which is neurology, Alzheimer's disease, DNA targeted next generation sequencing of 81 and 82 target regions, whole blood prognostic algorithmic analysis reported as a categorization of cognitive status. Next slide, please. Alzheimer's disease is one of the most pressing public health challenges we face. There are currently more than 7 million Americans aged 65 and older living with the disease, and as the US population ages, that number is expected to grow substantially. Early, accurate detection is no longer optional, it is essential for care planning and increasingly for determining eligibility for disease-modifying therapies. The current standard diagnostic pathway relies on specialist referrals, PET imaging, and CSF analysis. Blood-based biomarkers have emerged and have emerged as a less invasive and more accessible alternative. However, the existing blood-based tests are limited to identifying the presence of amyloid and tau pathology. They detect biological positivity, but they cannot predict whether a patient will actually progress clinically to Alzheimer's dementia. This distinction is critical. Biological positivity for brain pathology does not equal clinical progression. When we treat non-progressors with disease-modifying therapies, we expose them to serious adverse events without clinical benefit and drive unsustainable healthcare costs. Conversely, when we fail to identify true progressors in time, we foreclose the optimal therapeutic window. This is the clinical gap that MAP-AD is designed to address. The purpose of this assay is to provide a prognosis of progression to Alzheimer's dementia, specifically in patients with mild cognitive impairment, those with a CDR score of 0.5 equal to 0.5 score, and age 55 to 85. The goal is to move AD clinical practice from reactive to precision medicine. In terms of methodology, MAP-AD measures mitochondrial DNA methylation patterns from whole blood relying on next-generation sequencing. That molecular data is then processed through a proprietary AI algorithm that integrates the results with clinical metrics, specifically the patient's age, ApoE genotype, and CDR-SOV score, to produce an automated qualitative prognostic classification of AD progression risk. Next slide, please. So I'll briefly walk through the laboratory resources required to perform this assay, as this directly informs the complexity and cost considerations underlying our payment recommendation. The assay begins with 3 mL of whole blood collection in K2 or K3 EDTA tubes, which are transported to a CLIA-certified lab. DNA extraction is performed, and bisulfate treatment is then applied. This is a critical step that converts unmethylated cytosines and enables differential methylation analysis. PCR amplification is performed using the proprietary MAP-AD test oligos. Amplicon quality is verified. Library construction involving a second PCR for amplicon indexing occurs, and bead cleanups following each PCR step occurs. Library quantification and normalization are performed fluorometrically. And then NGS sequencing is conducted. Finally, the clinical and methylation data are analyzed through the proprietary AD test software algorithm to generate the prognostic output. As this slide demonstrates, MAP-AD is a multi-step, resource-intensive workflow that integrates molecular biology, sequencing instrumentation, and algorithmic analysis. This underscores the complexity behind the final prognostic results. Next slide, please. We are recommending that 0649U be priced via crosswalk to PLA code 0506U, which carries a 2026 clinical laboratory fee schedule payment of $1,938. We believe this crosswalk is well supported across 5 key dimensions of comparability. Specimen type. Both assays operate on extracted DNA as the specimen type. Both measure DNA methylation status as the analyte, and both employ targeted next-generation sequencing to interrogate those methylation patterns. Both use a multi-analyte algorithmic analysis framework, and both incorporate a proprietary algorithm to derive the final result, and both serve the shared clinical utility of risk stratification to guide therapy decision-making. Taken together, these are the 5 points of alignment that demonstrate 0506U represents the most appropriate existing PLA code comparator, and therefore the crosswalk recommendation for 0649U. Thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Hi, this is
I think
Chris
we have one
Chong.
from the panel.
Yeah, this is Chris Chong from the panel. So your test, has this been validated against any clinical cohort to show the progression? And if yes, what sample size was this cohort?
Thank you for the question. We can follow up with the details of that, and we can provide you a more comprehensive answer, but happy to do so.
Yes, thanks, Eric. We have validated with a cohort of nearly 200 patients, most of them from the Indiana University cohort and also the Kansas Medical Center.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All right, next up, we have Hologic.
Hello, this is Sarah Tiba, Senate with Hologic. I'm very happy to be talking with you all today about code 8XX32, which is infectious agent detection by nucleic acid, DNA or RNA, Candida species pooled result, Candida glabrata, and Trichomonas vaginalis amplified probe technique. 8XX32 is a category 1 CPT code, and Hologic produces an FDA approved kit that will fall under the CPT code. All right. Vaginitis is one of the most common reasons that women access healthcare worldwide. Appropriate diagnosis of the causative agent of vaginitis can guide appropriate treatment and treatment decisions. CPT 8XX32 describes a single multiplex molecular assay that detects and differentiates 3 different causes of vaginitis in a single procedure to provide individual results for the Candida species, Candida glabrata, and Trichomonas vaginalis. For the methodology and resources, the vaginal specimen is collected and placed in a tube with specimen transport media that lyses the organisms, releases the nucleic material, and stabilizes it from degradation during storage. Nucleic acid amplification is then performed using one of multiple different procedures, such as transcription-mediated amplification, TMA, or real-time polymerase chain reaction, RT-PCR. These procedures are performed using various types of instrumentation, such as either an integrated hardware and software system that fully automates all of the steps needed to perform the assay, from that sample processing through the amplification of the nucleic acid, detection and result determination, or through a combination of different instruments that perform one or more of the steps independently. For the reagents required, that includes the amplification reagent, the enzyme reagent, promoter reagent, internal controls, both positive and negative, and the positive calibrator. And again, a report is issued describing the qualitative results for Candida glabrata, Candida species pooled, and Trichomonas vaginalis. Based on the methodology and resources required, we recommend a crosswalk to 0455U. This code is for infectious agents, sexually transmitted infection, chlamydia trachomatis, Neisseria gonorrhea, and Trichomonas vaginalis, multiplex amplified probe technique with using urogenital specimens, each pathogen reported as detected or not detected. For our rationale, both services have similar analytic characterizations. They're both nucleic acid amplification tests, they're multiplex procedures, and they detect a similar number of targets. Additionally, they utilize similar sample types. They report out individual qualitative results for 3 sexually transmitted or urogenital pathogens, and they both guide treatment management decisions. To break it down a little bit further, we do have a chart, just a side-by-side comparison with 0455U and 8XX32. They, again, pathogen type, both are STI or urogenital. The target is DNA or RNA, while 0455U is FDA approved. 8XX32 can either be using an FDA approved kit or an LDT. They both have the multiplex amplified probe methodology and very similar clinical use. And they both report out the qualitative result for each of their 3 targets. That is all I have today, so I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Vitrolife.
Hello, my colleague Lisa should be here.
Lisa,
Hello,
you're on.
I'm
here you are.
sorry, I apologize. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. I'm Lisa Levison, Medical Science Liaison with Vitrolife Group and iGenomics Laboratory, and I'm here joined with the Laboratory Director of North America here to discuss codes 0607U and 0608U. Next slide, please. So first code 0607U, Emma, it's in the field of reproductive medicine, it's endometrial metagenomic microbiome analysis, and it utilizes a real-time PCR analysis for 31 bacterial DNA targets from the endometrial biopsy. They're reported with quantified levels of bacterial presence and targeted treatment recommendations. The EMMA test is a proprietary molecular test evaluating the uterine microbiome for embryo implantation compatibility. Lactobacillus-dominated microbiome is associated with higher IVF implantation and live birth rates, and microbiome disruption linked to recurrent implantation failure, RIF, and recurrent pregnancy loss, RPL. EMMA is always included with ALICE, which I will review in later slides, which detects pathogens associated with chronic endometritis. And the indications is for the recurrent implantation failure, recurrent pregnancy loss, and unexplained infertility for the ART, assisted reproductive technology patients, and suspected endometrial microbiome dysfunction. So the purpose is to evaluate the endometrial microbiome environment associated with the embryo implantation potential in patients that are going through ART. We report quantified bacterial findings and provides treatment guidance related to endometrial microbiome abnormalities and potential dysbiosis. Our methodology is a real-time PCR analysis performed on DNA extracted from an endometrial biopsy specimen. The assay evaluates 31 bacterial DNA targets associated with the endometrial microbiome, also including lactobacillus species and pathogenic bacterial organisms associated with dysbiosis and chronic endometritis. The results are categorized on microbiome profile interpretation and may include associated treatment or management recommendations. Next slide, please. So the resources for the EMA 0607U, the specimen is an endometrial biopsy collected from the uterine fundus using a pipeller similar device, approximately 70 milligrams of tissue placed into the iGenomics cryovial. And the sample is refrigerated after collection and shipped at room temperature to our iGenomics CLIA certified lab. Then we receive the specimen, they will extract the DNA from the tissue and process real-time PCR analysis of the targeted bacterial DNA. With equipment and reagents is the real-time PCR instrumentation, DNA extraction reagents, validated bacterial target amplification reagents, and primer probe sets, and proprietary reporting approach for endometrial microbiome interpretation. And our turnaround time is approximately 15 days from specimen receipt. Next slide, please. So for code 0607U, the EMA, we are asking for a recommendation for crosswalking to code 0505U, which is an infectious disease, vaginal infection panel identification of 32 pathogenic organisms, swab, real-time PCR, reported as positive or negative for each organism. So the rationale, as you can see here in the chart, the methodology is the same. It's a multiplex molecular organism analysis. Analyte type, same multi-target bacterial infection organism structure. Result is the same organism level molecular findings. Interpretation is the same multi-organism interpretation with clinically actionable reporting and same laboratory resources. Next slide, please. So the next test is code 0608U, ALICE, which is for analysis of infectious chronic endometritis. So again, utilizing of a real-time PCR analysis for 10 bacterial DNA targets reported with quantified levels of bacterial presence and targeted treatment recommendations. The ALICE test is a proprietary reproductive medicine test offered by iGenomics VitroLife Group that detects and quantifies pathogenic bacteria associated with chronic endometritis from an endometrial biopsy specimen. Chronic endometritis is a persistent inflammatory condition of the endometrium that may be completely asymptomatic and has been associated with infertility, recurrent implantation failure, and recurrent pregnancy loss. ALICE is intended to identify bacteria associated with chronic endometritis and provide antibiotic and/or probiotic treatment recommendation based on detected organisms. ALICE may be used with patients with recurrent implantation failure, recurrent pregnancy loss, unexplained infertility, or suspected chronic endometritis. So the purpose is to detect and quantify bacterial DNA targets associated with chronic endometritis from the endometrial biopsy specimen, and then hopefully to provide information that may assist in treatment selection and management prior to an embryo transfer or assisted reproductive treatment. The methodology is real-time PCR analysis performed on DNA extracted from an endometrial biopsy specimen, and it evaluates 10 bacterial targets associated with chronic endometritis, which they are listed there below. Sample quality and adequacy are evaluated prior to the analysis, and results include quantified bacterial findings, associated treatment recommendations as applicable. Next slide, please. So with code 0608U, the ALICE, the specimen, again, is similar endometrial biopsy collected from the fundus, approximately 70 milligrams of tissue. Samples refrigerated and then shipped to our iGenomics CLIA lab. And the process is the samples received, DNA is extracted from the tissue, real-time PCR analysis of the bacterial DNA targets associated with chronic endometritis, quantification interpretation of the targeted bacterial findings, and a clinical report generated with bacterial finding treatment recommendations as a. The equipment and reagents is real-time PCR instrumentation, DNA extraction reagents, and validated microorganism-specific amplification reagents and primer probe sets. Turnaround time, again, for this one is approximately 15 days from specimen receipt. Next slide, please. So for code 0608U, the ALICE test, We are requesting for the recommendation for crosswalk to code 0557U. So this is an infectious disease panel for bacterial vaginosis and vaginitis, a real-time amplification of DNA markers for the bacterial targets listed below. And under the rationale, same as with the EMA, the methodology is the same. Multiplex real-time PCR bacterial DNA analysis methodology, the analyte type, same. Multi-target bacterial DNA structure within reproductive women's health, result type, organism level bacterial findings, interpretation, multiple organism interpretation with clinically actionable reporting. And then the laboratory resources is the same as the molecular workflow and amplification technology and interpretation infrastructure. So the two tests that we crosswalk to are essentially, one is of the endometrial, the lining of the uterus, and the others are of like the vaginal area, but all within the reproductive system. So that is it. Is there any questions that would be happy to answer?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon and thank you. I am Haluk Teskan, a medical oncologist and chief medical officer for Droplet Biosciences, and I'm joined here by my colleague, Dr. Aseka Lazar, our senior director of research and development. We are here to discuss code X262U, our lymphodeck head and neck MRD assay. Next slide, please. The code description is oncology, head and neck, circulating tumor DNA, tumor-informed next-generation sequencing analysis of patient-specific somatic variants identified from primary tumor tissue, postoperative lymphatic exudate specimen, an algorithm that reports the presence or absence of ctDNA. The clinical question we address is residual disease following curative intent surgery for HPV independent or also HPV negative head and neck squamous cell carcinoma. And despite optimal surgery, recurrence rate in this disease remains high. And although adjuvant therapy is effective in reducing the risk of recurrence, it can result in lifelong debilitating complications. Hence, understanding residual disease and guiding adjuvant therapy is critical. In the postoperative setting, circulating tumor DNA in plasma is very low, which limits the use of plasma-based MRD assays. The timing of initiation and completion of adjuvant therapy is critical in this disease and directly relates to outcome. As such, an MRD status to be known is required to be known within a few weeks of surgery to inform adjuvant therapy. Our solution is to use post-surgical drain fluid collected from routinely placed drains approximately 24 hours after surgery, because this lymphatic exudate sits proximal to the resected tumor and is enriched for ctDNA in patients with residual disease. Methodologically, our assay mirrors plasma-based tumor-informed MRD testing, the same approach to identifying patients' tumor-specific somatic variants, then evaluation of the cfDNA for variants from the patient-specific somatic mutation panel, and the same resource profile, and the same output, which is ctDNA present, MRD positive, or absent, meaning MRD negative. And this result informs adjuvant treatment decisions alongside clinical pathologic risk and patient preferences. Next slide, please. This slide outlines the resources involved, a multi-step labor-intensive workflow comparable to plasma-based tumor-informed NGS assays for MRD evaluation. It begins with genomic DNA extraction from tumor tissue and whole blood, quantification and sequencing, a bioinformatics pipeline then builds a patient-specific variant reference. Separately, the lymphatic exudate is collected into a Streck tube, undergoes cell-free DNA extraction optimized for that specimen. The cfDNA is sequenced and pipeline tuned for ultra-low frequency detection, algorithmically determines whether ctDNA is present. All data review, quality control, interpretation, and reporting are performed in our CLIA-CAP laboratory environment. Next slide, please. This slide places LymphDetect alongside the Haystack MRD baseline assay because the two align closely in methodology, resources, output, and sample type. Both use a personalized tumor-specific mutation assay built on optimized error-corrected next-generation sequencing. Our custom 699 gene panel is focused on HPV-negative head and neck cancers. Both interrogate up to dozens of tumor-specific variants, in our case, up to 95 variants. Both report a single result whether a measurable disease signature was detected or not detected. Both use tumor tissue and whole blood, and we use the same analyzed cfDNA. In our case, it is extracted from the lymphatic exudates. In the crosswalk candidate is from the plasma. Both are collected in strict tube, and the extraction is only negligible variance in regards to optimized for the lymphatic fluid. Our architecture is the same, and the proximal biofluid is what is unique to us. Next slide, please. This brings us to our recommendation to crosswalk to code 0560U. 0560U is Haystack MRD baseline assay that uses genomic sequence analysis of cell-free DNA. And from whole blood and tumor tissue, it's a baseline assessment that builds a personalized variant panel to evaluate current MRD and compare it to, again, subsequent assessments. Our rationale rests on 3 points. First, methodology. Both our assay and the crosswalk candidate are built on next-generation sequencing. Second, output, current MRD result. And thirdly, resource intensity. Both require baseline analysis of tumor and blood to construct a personalized reference, followed by cfDNA analysis. The clinical workflow, the technology, and the laboratory effort all align closely with 0560U, which is why we believe the crosswalk is appropriate. Thank you, and Dr. Lazar and I will be glad to take your questions.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Christine Stanley, Chief Genomics and Compliance Officer and CLIA Director at Variantix. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Dr. Sherelle Weiss, Alex Kaplan, Jolene Dalton, and Cheryl Laton. Thank you for the opportunity to present our pricing recommendations for our 8 newly assigned PLA codes, X250U, X254U, X255U, X272U, X280U, X285U, X291U, and X303U. Next slide, please. Variantix is a commercial genetic testing laboratory dedicated to delivering comprehensive testing for rare genetic disorders, reproductive health, and precision oncology. The 8 PLA codes cover our comprehensive assays, including Genomic Unity Exome Plus, Genomic Unity Whole Genome Analysis, and IRISite Comprehensive Prenatal Analysis across both duo and trio cohorts, alongside our whole genome-based targeted panels, OncoAlly Comprehensive Hereditary Cancer, Hereditary Hematological Cancer assays, which are all reviewed by boarded geneticists and pathologists. The core clinical purpose is to eliminate the costly and exhausting diagnostic odyssey in pediatric, prenatal, and oncological medical management using our whole genome platform. Next slide, please. Our platform's design directly aligns with major evolving clinical standards and recommendations for comprehensive sequencing by the American College of Medical Genetics and Genomics, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and for fetal structural anomalies on ultrasound, both the Society of Maternal Fetal Medicine and the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists strongly support high-resolution sequencing. Variantix accomplishes this by performing all germline testing on proprietary PCR-free whole genome sequencing platform. Instead of multiple siloed assays, our single pipeline simultaneously integrates and simplifies reporting of sequence changes, structural variant calling, copy number variants, mitochondrial genome analysis, repeat expansion analysis, and selected genes. With that, we're able to reduce the clinical necessity of ordering multiple disjointed genetic tests. Next slide, please. So we utilize PCR-free short-read whole genome sequencing for both the proband and respective comparators. Then we can reflex and perform orthogonal confirmation using long-read sequencing for complex variants identified by short-read sequencing. This specific infrastructure allows us to achieve an additional 20% diagnostic yield in cases that have already failed traditional whole exome sequencing, which is fundamentally limited by exon capture boundaries, capture gaps, and extreme PCR amplification bias. Our platform delivers uninterrupted coverage across coding and non-coding borders, processing single nucleotide variants, deep intronic variants, repeats, inversions, structural variants in a single run. Performing this analysis on duo or trio cohorts is highly recommended clinically and allows us to immediately filter out benign inherited variants, instantly confirm inheritance phase, and confidently spot de novo events. Next slide, please. It may not be showing everything. Can you advance one more? And let me just see if it's adding. Yeah, thank you. Keep advancing. Advance one more. This is like an active slide. That's probably fine. Okay, so this is an example of a patient with DMD who had prior testing of targeted gene sequencing twice, del-dup analysis twice, and whole exome testing, all reported as negative because the pathogenic variant was a complex 713 kilobase inversion spanning exons 45 to 57 of the DMD gene. So the standard whole exome and other assays were completely blind to this non-copy number altering inversion. Next slide. Can you advance again? Thank you. Sorry about that. So we also apply our whole genome sequencing infrastructure to our targeted cancer lines. Let me see if this is the right slide. Yeah. Onco-Ally comprehensive hereditary cancer and hereditary hematological cancer assays. Traditional hereditary capture panels feature narrow boundaries that frequently miss small sequence variations hidden inside introns, deep inversions, or complex structural variants. Onco-Ally takes a different path. We sequence the entire genome, but apply bioinformatic focus specifically on hereditary cancer genes, over 115 genes for comprehensive and 105 for hematological. This guarantees uncompromised coverage and automatic reflex to long-read genome sequencing to cleanly resolve complex pseudogene analysis, such as in PMS2. Next slide, please. Our clinical laboratory uses advanced sequencing equipment listed here, as well as specialized tissue and cell culture capabilities with advanced bioinformatic processing. Next slide, please. All right, so our crosswalk strategy and recommendations. We currently have existing approved PLA codes for these analyses, both as singletons and as comparators. Given the recent industry shift towards single code reporting, we have submitted these new PLA codes as comprehensive units that include the comparators. So our recommendation is to maintain this efficient single code billing strategy by setting up pricing for these new PLAs that are equivalent to the combined cost of the currently utilized billing codes. So for Genomic Unity Exome Plus, for X255U, which is a duo, we recommend a crosswalk combining the singleton code 0214U plus one comparator code 0215U. And for the X303U trio, we recommend crosswalk to 0214U plus two comparator codes of 0215U. Next slide, please. For Genomic Unity Whole Genome Analysis, for X250U, which is a duo, crosswalk to base genome code 0212U plus one comparator of 0213U. And for X272U, which is a trio, crosswalk to 0212U plus two comparators of 0213U. Next slide, please. For our IRISite comprehensive prenatal analysis, for X285U, which is a duo, crosswalk to the prenatal singleton 0335U plus comparator 0336U. And for the X291U trio, crosswalk 0335U to two prenatal 0336U. Next slide, please. For our Onco-Ally precision oncology assays, we'd like to emphasize the depth of coverage and the comprehensive list of genes. Both are based on the whole genome sequencing capabilities. Next slide, please. For X280U, comprehensive hereditary cancer, we recommend a crosswalk combining 0218U, which is full sequencing and deletion duplication analysis, with hereditary cancer panels 81435 or 81432. This accounts for over 115 genes fully analyzed across exons, introns, mobile elements, and reflexes to long-read sequencing. Next slide, please. Our Onco-Ally hereditary hematologic cancer analysis also analyzes genomic DNA via whole genome sequencing to identify single nucleotide variants, deletion insertions, characterize intronic variants, copy number variants, duplications and deletions, inversions and mobile element insertions with the analysis of over 105 genes. For next slide, please. For X254U, the hereditary hematological cancer, we recommend a crosswalk of 0218U plus the tissue culture code of 88233 and bone marrow failure panel sequencing code of 81441 to fully represent the extensive 105 plus full gene sequencing and structural analyses performed. In each case, the proposed crosswalks accurately reflect the comprehensive clinical service and medical interpretation required. Thank you, and I'm happy to address any questions from the panel.
Hi, this is Jillian. Can you hear me?
Yes.
For your germline genomes and exomes, in your methodology, you talked about conducting next generation sequencing and then reflexing to Oxford Nanopore for confirmation when you need it. Can you both clarify how often you reflex, like how common it is that you're doing reflex, and also speak to some of the other laboratory equipment mentioned on your other slide, the complete genomic sequencer and the array system, and when you use those?
Okay, so I will follow up this with a written, more detailed response, but in general, I don't know the exact percent that reflexes, but I'm going to guess like around 20% will reflex to long read sequencing, but it really varies depending on the test that's ordered. So like a prenatal analysis would reflex more often because it has more structural variants, and any analyses for ataxia might reflex more often for STRs, but I'll put that in writing. And then for as far as the equipment goes, we do have a laboratory that can send samples to different sequencers. They're all validated with the same performance characteristics. So we make the decision based on the assay that we're running. And again, that's probably too detailed to cover here, but I can follow up with a written response.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Clear note?
Hi, everyone. Thank you. My name is Shmuel Chowdhury. I'm the Vice President of Laboratory Operations and the Clinical Lab Director at ClearNote Health. I'll be presenting on code X282U. Next slide, please. So the background for this assay is that it's designed to be an early detection test for the detection of pancreatic cancer. It's a blood-based liquid biopsy approach with the methodology of low-pass whole genome sequencing with 5-HMC enrichment, plus a glycan biomarker analysis, and targeted for patients at a high risk of pancreatic cancer. For example, patients aged over the age of 50 with a new diagnosis of type 2 diabetes. Next slide, please. So for the resources involved in the test, plasma is isolated from whole blood and is subjected to two parallel but separate workflows. One to generate the glycan biomarker measurement of CA19-9 via immunoassay. In parallel, plasma is aliquoted and cell-free DNA extraction is performed for low-pass whole genome sequencing and parallel 5-HMC enrichment. Downstream for the post-analytical, these inputs are entered into a validated classification algorithm. The patient reports generated of a cancer detected or not detected result. Next slide, please. So our crosswalk recommendation is to crosswalk X282U to 0410U plus 86301. The rationale being that for the low-pass whole genome and 5-HMC enrichment, the pre-analytical and post-analytical parts of the workflow are exactly the same as code 0410U, as that was the initial version of the test, and now this is the updated version of the pancreatic test. The only difference in the resources being between these two codes is the addition of the separate glycan biomarker analysis via immunoassay with CA19-9, hence the addition of the code 86301 representing the immunoassay for CA19-9. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Natera?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to present the logic here for these codes. My name is Matt Mega. I'm the Senior Vice President of Market Access at Natera. I'm going to be presenting on PLA code 0633U, which is Natera's single gene non-invasive prenatal test. The following slides walk through the background, methodology, and resources, and our crosswalk recommendation. 0633U is a cell-free DNA-based NGS test that determines fetal risk of inheriting serious autosomal recessive conditions. The test assesses fetal risk for four conditions: cystic fibrosis, spinal muscular atrophy, alpha thalassemia, and beta hemoglobinopathies, including sickle cell disease. The methodology is cell-free DNA extracted from maternal blood, analyzed by NGS, to identify paternally inherited variants and determine fetal inheritance of the maternal mutation. A qualified lab professional, that is a genetic counselor, reviews the data, composes a report, communicates findings to the ordering provider. Results are reported as a fetal risk score, giving clinicians actionable information for counseling and care decisions. Next slide. So this test has a well-defined reproducible workflow using standard collection materials and validated analytical tools. The sample collection consists of two 10-milliliter struct blood collection tubes drawn from the pregnant patient. Cell-free DNA is extracted, run on Natera's single-gene NIPT NGS assay, then processed through the single-gene NIPT analytic algorithm to generate a clinical risk summary. Clinical staff, that is genetic counselors or lab directors, review and interpret results before communicating to the ordering provider. Next slide. Natera is recommending crosswalk for this PLA code. The crosswalk to 0489U is the strongest, most defensible pricing anchor for CMS based on 4 points of comparability. First, both codes use cell-free DNA from maternal blood and analyze 1+ genes with overlapping targets, including CFTR and SMN1. Both incorporate an algorithm, produce a fetal risk score, an identical reportable output. The primary distinction is a technical refinement in how fetal inheritance is determined. The clinical intent, specimen, and output are equivalent. Crosswalking to 489U provides a precedent-based pricing anchor rather than relying on gap fill. Next slide, please. Okay, the second code is X279U. It's a new carrier screening panel. We can go to the next slide. X279U is a targeted 6-gene carrier panel covering 4 serious conditions, enabling at-risk couples to make informed reproductive decisions. Carrier screening identifies individuals and couples at risk of having a child with a serious condition, even with no known family history. X279U covers 4 conditions across 6 genes: CF, cystic fibrosis, Fragile X, spinal muscular atrophy, and Duchenne muscular dystrophy, plus HBB, HbA1, HbA2 for the hemoglobinopathies. The panel targets severe, well-characterized conditions. Next slide, please. 279U is performed from a single standard blood draw using Natera's validated Horizon carrier screening platform. Only one 6-milliliter EDTA blood tube is required. X279U uses genomic DNA, not cell-free DNA, which is a distinction between the prior code. The results are reviewed by a lab director and/or genetic counselor before reporting. The final slide. For recommendation, Natera recommends a crosswalk to code 0449U, which is technically appropriate and equitable. X279U covers all 5 required genes plus DMD. Both codes use the same method, which is genomic sequence analysis, the same sample type, and are used for carrier screening, which is the same category. 0449U requires 5 genes: CS, SMN1, HBB, HbA1, HbA2. X279 covers all 5 plus adds the DMD, which is 6 genes total. And finally, the incremental addition of DMD is the key clinical differentiator. Otherwise, the platform, workflow, and population are otherwise identical. I'm happy to take any questions.
Hey, Matt. This is Mark Rumpler from the
Hi, Mark.
panel. So this is regarding 0633U, and you mentioned that test uses one or more targets, and I'm guessing that's determined by the carrier status, but does the number of gene targets vary per patient? And if so, does that affect the per test cost?
So it is intended to confirm a positive gene, right, on a carrier screening panel by the parent or by the mother in this case. And so it would depend on that result. The single gene would be run on the pre-specified or the identified gene. If there were two, then it could be run on multiple. It's not my understanding that it increases the cost.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to the Association for Molecular Pathology.
Good afternoon. I've got a lot of codes, so we're going to just sort of skip to the recommendations. Our first code is 817183. We're recommending gap fill because we believe that the gap fill allows for the most accurate determination of the work needed. We are in alignment with ASM on that. Okay. Next code is 87XX2. We are recommending crosswalk to 87500. Both detect resistance to a bacterium, and we are in alignment with ASM on this. Next code is 8XX32. We are recommending crosswalk to 87631. Overall, there are 3 distinct lines reported: Candida pooled, Candida glabata, and Trichomonas. We are in alignment with ASM on this code. Next code is 87638. We are recommending crosswalk to 87635. This is to address the additional work and resources for reporting communicable diseases to federal and state public health authorities. We are in alignment with ASM and ACLA on this code. Next code is 8XX17. Our recommendation is to crosswalk to 81432. This addresses the work and resource in running this test using NGS. We did consider other options, but those options, which had similar number of genes, did not include copy number evaluation or deletion duplication analysis. Next code is 8XX19. We are recommending gap fill as there's no comparison for a number of genes performed for this code. Oops. Come on. Move. It's not moving forward. Oops, there it is. Gap fill. Next code is 8XX22. This one we're recommending crosswalk to 81432. This addresses the work and the resources for running this test using NGS. We did consider some other codes, but there are some other crosswalks, but they did not include copy number analysis. So we recommend 81432. This next code 0648U, we are recommending crosswalk, as similar already presented by Thermo Fisher. We are recommending crosswalk to 0022U, as this is the same assay, though an updated version of it. Thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. We now have theranostics.
Thank you. My name is Marcus Cognetti, representing Theranostics, here to discuss PLA code X258U. So as a background to this, X258U is a comparative analysis using short random repeats, STR markers, patient comparative analysis, DNA, buccal swab, and tissue reported as a match or a mismatch. As some background to this, the no-error test was developed to address documented specimen identification errors in surgical pathology, which can result in inappropriate cancer treatments, delayed diagnosis, unnecessary procedures, and significant patient harm. Studies have demonstrated that specimen switching errors have a frequency as high as 1.69%, adversely affecting up to 3.5% of the patients. The purpose of the no-error test was to have a diagnostic test using STR technology, DNA analysis, to compare a patient and a reference sample with DNA extracted from a biopsy on a cancer specimen to determine potential specimen switches or contamination. By providing an independent verification step to a definitive treatment decision, no-error provides diagnostic confidence, supports patient safety, and promotes high-quality, value-based cancer care. Methodology-wise, DNA from a buccal swab and tissue are subjected to polymerase chain recombination amplification for short tandem repeat analysis, or STR analysis. A qualified laboratory professional reviews the data, composes a report, and communicates the findings to the ordering provider. From a resource standpoint, the first step in the procedure is extraction. The buccal swab uses Promega's swab solution to use lysis cells to pull out the DNA. On the formalin-fixed paraffin-embedded tissue, we use a cell lysate using a wax-free DNA extraction kit from TrimGen. Both extracted DNA samples are then subject to amplification using the Identifier Plus, a multiplex reaction system that contains primers of 15 identification loci, as well as immunoglobulin for gender determination from Thermo Fisher. The analysis is the amplification products are separated on an ABI 3730 XL capillary electrophoresis system. The interpretation, the electrophoresis data is analyzed using gene mapper software. The alleles detected in each gene collectively then represent the profile for that patient. The request here is crosswalk to 81625 plus half a unit of 81266. 81265 is similar in technology. It's short tandem repeat markers, patient and comparative specimen. It includes buccal and tissue samples, and 81266, which is again comparative short tandem repeat markers, each additional sample. The rationale behind this is that the testing methodology and the samples are similar, if not identical in nature. We're using basically PCR identification using STR analysis on both a buccal and a tissue sample. The addition for the additional inclusion request on 81265 is that our data shows that half of these samples have bilateral cancers. And what that means is, in addition to the tissue and the original buccal sample, we are testing a third sample and piece of material. Thank you for the time and the opportunity to present. I'm available for questions.
Hello,
All right,
this is Joe
thank you.
Leonard.
Oop, sorry, Joe.
Oh, sorry. Quick question. So the number of STR markers, can you please allude to this? How many markers you use?
Yeah, there's 15 markers, plus we put immunoglobulin in there. So there's 16 total markers, 15 loci markers. We'd certainly be happy to give you additional information on that and writing follow-up with details on that.
Just one additional quick question. So when, let's say, let's go for the simple example, all markers are concordant. Do you report out the status of the individual markers in terms of the allele or allelotype? And then do you
Good
give
question.
maybe, yeah. And then what does the final result look like when you issue the report? That would be helpful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we have the data and we'll provide additional copies of the example report, but the information that essentially the physician gets is it's a match or a mismatch on that. But we'll provide example reports so you get to see how they're reported back to the physicians.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to Vesica Health. Everybody's doing a great job.
Good afternoon. My name is Christopher Thibodeau with Vesica Health, presenting on code 0613U. I want to first off thank the CMS team for putting the meeting together and the panel for giving us the opportunity to present. AssureMDx is a non-invasive, urine-based multi-omic assay designed to aid in the detection of bladder cancer and upper tract urothelial carcinoma in patients presenting with hematuria. The assay combines DNA methylation and somatic mutation biomarkers associated with urothelial carcinoma and generates a probability index through a proprietary algorithm. Today, we are requesting that CMS crosswalk 0613U to 0420U, which we believe is the most comparable code on the CLFS based on methodology, workflow, resource utilization, and intended clinical use. AssureMDx is performed exclusively in Vesica Health's CLIA certified laboratory. The assay evaluates 6 biomarkers, 3 DNA methylation markers, TWIST1, OTX1, and 1CUT2 are analyzed using methylation-specific quantitative PCR. 3 mutation markers, FGFR3, HRAS, and the TERT promoter, are analyzed using targeted next-generation sequencing. These results are integrated through a validated multivariable algorithm to generate a probability index for the urothelial carcinoma risk. The intended purpose of the assay is to support risk stratification of patients presenting with hematuria and to assist physicians in determining which patients should proceed to further urologic evaluation. This slide summarizes the laboratory workflow. Sorry, I'm going quickly here. On resources slide. Thank you. Oh, I've got the clicker. Excuse me. This slide summarizes laboratory workflow and resources required to perform AssureMDx. The process includes specimen accessioning and DNA extraction, bisulfite conversion for methylation analysis, methylation-specific PCR, targeted next-gen sequencing library preparation and sequencing, bioinformatics analysis, algorithmic interpretation, quality control review, and laboratory oversight by our laboratory director. Instrumentation includes both real-time PCR and next-gen sequencing platforms supported by a validated bioinformatics pipeline. The key point is that AssureMDx utilizes multiple molecular technologies within a single integrated workflow and requires significant laboratory analytical resources. Perfect. This brings us to our recommendation. Vesica Health respectfully requests that CMS crosswalk 0613U to 0420U CX Bladder Detect Plus. We believe this code is the most appropriate comparator because both assays are urine-based molecular tests intended to assess urothelial carcinoma risk. Both incorporate multiple molecular methodologies within a single integrated workflow. Both include the biomarkers FGFR3 and TERT for analysis. Both rely on proprietary algorithmic interpretation, and both generate a composite risk assessment result to support clinical decision-making. Importantly, the overall laboratory complexity and resource requirements are highly comparable. We reviewed available CLFS codes and did not identify another code that was more closely aligned with both the molecular workflow and intended use of 0613U. I would like to briefly highlight similarities shown in this comparison. Both assays are single laboratory proprietary tests. Both utilize urine specimens collected and transported in a similar manner. Both require specimen processing, nucleic acid extraction, and molecular analysis. Both incorporate multiple biomarkers, including FGFR3 and TERT. Both combine multiple molecular technologies with algorithmic interpretation to generate a single risk assessment for the risk of urothelial carcinoma. While the specific analytes and analytical methods slightly differ, the overall workflow, complexity, resource utilization, and intended clinical application are highly comparable. For those reasons, we believe that 0420U represents the most appropriate crosswalk for 0613U. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I'll happily answer any questions.
Okay, Dr. Rumpler.
Hi. So are the methylation specific PCR and the targeted NGS components, are those run on the same extract, the same DNA extract?
Great question. When we do the DNA extraction, we actually split the sample and we do the bisulfite treatment on the sample for DNA methylation, and then we run the somatic mutation on the separate part of the sample.
Okay, so it's separate extracts. Am I hearing the same or separate extracts?
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear you.
Is it the same?
Separate extract. Oh, no, one DNA extraction, then we split the sample.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you so much.
Certainly.
Gotcha.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Okay, next, ID Fish Technology.
Good afternoon. I'm Joseph Boroscano. I'm here representing ID Fish Technologies Incorporated. We're asking for reconsideration for gap fill test 0580U, the IDART Lyme IgG immunoblat, and a new application for gap fill, code 0615U, the Lyme IgM immunoblat. I'm a medical doctor, a physician, and my clinical background, I think you'll see, results in a little bit different format to the slides. So the background is that these tests are unique. 0580U is for antibody